Good day, grade 11s. Welcome to today's economics lesson. My name is Zolega Migi. This lesson is brought to you by Gauteng Department of Education in collaboration with Saibono Discovery Center and broadcast by Pagama Research and Development. Today's lesson is going to be about environmental sustainability. Remember to use our WhatsApp line for questions, which is 079 578 2908. Our WhatsApp line is 079 578 2908. Today's topic is environmental sustainability. You'll remember in grade 11 you did globalization, which encompassed the environment, the protection of the environment, approaches to sustainability, and also the global and impact on South Africa. Today we are going to cover the analysis of environmental sustainability and recent international agreements which happened in Rio de Janeiro and also in Johannesburg. We're also going to cover the state of the environment, the measures to ensure sustainability, and international agreements, which also include the Rio de Janeiro and the Johannesburg Summit. Right, we'll first recap on globalization. We'll first cover the most important terms when it comes to globalization. The first one is absolute advantage, which is the ability to produce many goods efficiently by using fewer resources that fewer resources that any other country can. So this simply means a certain country can produce the same good that the other country produces, but in this case they use fewer resources, therefore gaining absolute advantage over the other. Right, comparative advantage, it is the ability to produce goods at a lower opportunity cost than another country. Right, and then we move to externalities. These are costs or benefits of the economic activities that do not affect the producer that caused them. They affect the environment or other people in the other country. So when it comes to externalities, they can either be positive or negative. Opportunity cost. Opportunity cost is the loss of the benefit that could have been enjoyed or had a given choice not been made. The cost of not doing something that something else can be done. Right, to move to the north and the south divide. This is the division between the wealth and northern hemisphere countries and the poor developing countries which are in the southern hemisphere, which is mostly Africa and some East European countries. Globalization. There are organizations that are involved within the globalization of the world. Right, remember the meaning of globalization. It is where people and companies interact worldwide. Right, there is United Nations. Its purpose is to keep peace. Right, and then there is the World Trade Organization. Its purpose is to promote free trade and protect the environment. And then there is the International Monetary Fund, popularly known as IMF. Its purpose is to supervise the international financial system. And then there is the World Bank. Right, the World Bank is to provide finances to the developing countries around the world. What causes a globalization? Right, globalization is caused by trade liberalization, improved technology, communication, transportation, and computer technology. Those are the few causes of globalization, and also production processes. As any other thing, globalization has consequences. Right, what are the consequences of globalization? The environment, the culture, production sectors, employment, and economic growth. What consequence does globalization have on the environment? Right, the leading industrialization around the world have dire troubles for the environment. And also when it comes to culture, due to the fact that Europe has higher influence when it comes to globalization, it means some of the countries, especially in Africa, they seem to let go of their culture and adopt the European culture. And also, when it comes to production sectors, it simply means most of our local economies or local production companies get to lose more of its income due to the fact that most people will prefer to buy European products compared to local products. Employment. Globalization can also mean we get to lose most qualified individuals to other countries. Economic growth. When it comes to economic growth, countries that have a lower influence when it comes to production, they get to suffer more compared to countries that have more influence. That means the countries that are in the southern hemisphere will suffer compared to countries that are in the northern hemisphere. Right. We said absolute advantage. This is also a consequence of globalization, right? A country will have an absolute advantage over another country when it can produce at a lower cost than other countries while using the same resources. That's another. Then comparative advantage. A country can choose to produce the products that is best at, which are most profitable. Advantages of globalization, right? What are the advantages of globalization? One, it is increased GDP. Two, increased job opportunities. Three, improved living conditions. Interaction with other countries. Access to new markets. Access to new talent. Right. Let's move here. When we say the moment there is globalization, it means simple means, right? We are able to export and import between the two countries, right? This means we can grow our GDP, right? The next point is increased job opportunities. When the world is globalized, that means individuals are able to seek work in any other country that they need to be. They are not restricted to their country of origin only, right? Improved living conditions. With technology, because globalization comes with technology, that means our conditions can be improved with obviously higher chances of being employed. That means our standard of living can improve, right? We also get the ability to interact between countries, right? We are able to interact due to also technology. We are able to interact with other countries, right? And also globalization also give us access to new markets. This simply means as local companies or as local production companies, we have access to international markets. That's giving us the ability to produce more and also increase our employment, right? And also access to new talent. Right. The North and the South divide. The North and the South divide simple means the divide or the division between the Northern Hemisphere countries and the Southern Hemisphere countries. This is the developed and the developing countries, right? The North countries have improved infrastructure and latest technology. These are countries that are in Europe, that's Australia, USA, the likes of those countries. And then the South, we are mainly agricultural and primary activities countries. Those include mining. So that's what we're mostly based in. So that's the developing countries, while the North is the developed countries. Right. South Africa is part of this, the North and the South divide. It participates in international trade, though this participation has both positive and negative effects to participation in this. Right. When South Africa participates in this, that means as a country, the issue of us participating in international trade has positive and negative impacts. One of its negative impacts is the fact that we are importing more than we are exporting to the other country. That means our local produce is not massively available in the international market. So that is one of the negative effects that it have. Right. We are going to do the economic redress, which is the environmental deterioration. Right. Within this, we have air pollution. Right. What is air pollution? These are harmful chemicals and sounds in the air. Then there is acid rain. These are fumes from vehicles that release chemical into the air and combine into the moisture, and also forming acid rain, which will rain down to earth. These poses environment problems to us. So it's air pollution and acid rain. Biodiversity. What is biodiversity? It is large variety and abundance of life forms in the ecosystems. That is biogas. This is the use of biological materials to generate energy. Right. We also have some definitions that are important in this topic. One, it's emissions charges, extinction, fuel and vehicle taxes, global warming, and greenhouse gases. What are emission charges? These are taxes on firms based on the amount of air, soil, water pollution they cause. So these taxes can be imposed on firms. This is based on how much pollution are they causing. It can either be air, soil, or water. Extinction. What is the meaning of extinction? It is the ceasing or to exist of a certain species of living organism, such as plant or animal. For example, there is a big worry about rhinos, which are going almost extinct, right, due to poaching. So, right, and also we have dinosaurs. Dinosaurs are extinct, right, and some other plants, right, and also fuel and vehicle taxes. These are taxes levied on amount of vehicles that are brought and fuel that is used by motorists, right? And then global warming. It is polluted gases trapped in the Earth's atmosphere that causes an increase in the average temperature around the planet. Greenhouse gases. These are polluted gases that causes global warming. We move recycling. What is recycling? Recycling, it is a form that can save the environment. It is a process that can save the environment. Rather, I would say that. What is recycling? Recycling is using material again for the same or another purpose instead of throwing away. We can recycle plastic. We can recycle paper. That is a form of, instead of throwing it away because it might end up in our seas. Right, and then soil degradation. This is reducing the quality of soil and the levels of nutrients present in it. Soil erosion. It is the washing away. The simple definition that we usually see is the washing away of the top soil. Right. Usually the topsoil washes away. It goes into the sea, and then it goes into the rivers, and also giving it problems when it comes to our water sources. Right. Sustainable development. What is sustainable development? It is meeting the needs of the present generation without compromising the needs of the future generation. Right. It is meeting the needs of the present generation without compromising the needs of the future generations. That is the definition of sustainable development. That means we can use all the resources that we have, but we have to remember the future generations. We do not have to exhaust all the resources that we have. So we have to be sustainable with all our resources. Remember to use our WhatsApp line for questions. It is 079 578 2908. It is 079 578 2908. Right. With the issue of global warming and environmental sustainability, treaties were developed around the world. right? We have international treaties or international agreements, right? One, in 1989, we had the Basel Treaty. Then in 1992, we had the Rio de Janeiro Summit. In 1997, we had the Kyoto Protocol. In 2001, we had the Stockholm Protocol. Then in 2002, we had the Johannesburg Summit. And then there is the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, which is COP17. If I'm not mistaken, then we are approaching the COP17. We are supposed to have the COP18. I'm sorry, since we've had the COP18. Right. In 2016, we had the Paris Agreement. Right. These are all the treaties that we have, or the agreements that we've had so far, approaching what we call sustainable development when it comes to our environment and also the emissions of gases into the air. Right. When it comes to environmental sustainability, we have a few terms that we need to know. Right. The first term is pollution, then preservation, soil erosion, and water pollution. Right. What is pollution? Right. Pollution is the introduction of waste matter into the environment, both direct and indirect. Then preservation, it is to keep resources that are non-renewable intact, e.g. ecological systems and heritage sites. These sources are non-renewable, so we need to preserve them. These include the ecological systems and heritage sites, so we need to keep them and preserve them. Right. Soil erosion. Right. This refers to the wearing away of topsoil by natural or physical forces of water, wind, through forces associated with farming, such as tillage. So the soil, the washing of topsoil can be either be the cause of natural causes, which is rain. It can either be cause of farming. Farming can also cause the washing away of the topsoil. Water pollution. It is the introduction of chemical or physical or biological matters into a fresh water. Some companies, when they sometimes what we call dispose their chemical waste into water, therefore polluting our water. Right. They usually dispose them in seas. That happens. Right. And also terms continue. Right. There is the green tax or environmental tax. Tax can be imposed on the output of a good where external environmental costs are generated. Right. Green taxes are charged on items such as tires. So a certain tax can be imposed. It can either be on per item. Right. On these, it is where environmental costs are generated. For example, it's called a green tax or environmental tax. Right. Land pollution or environmental pollution. What is this? This arises from dumping toxic waste products. It includes visible water and litter, as well as the pollution of the soil itself. Marketable permits. Each business is given a license or a permit to emit a share of the chemical pollutants. These are marketable permits. We continue with terms. The environment. What is the environment? Environment refers to everything around us. It can be either land, water, air, plants, or animal life. Right. It provides us with the space to live, erect buildings, and also produce food. So the environment, it is our surroundings, including animal. With the environment, we have the ability to live, erect infrastructure, and also produce our food. All right. Environment subsidies. These are cash granted by the government for activities that reduce environmental damage. For example, recycling of waste, production of unleaded petrol, development of an equipment to save or reduce smoke. In this case, environmental subsidies, it simply means the government can give a certain company a subsidy or cash for either recycling of waste, producing unleaded petrol, and also developing a product or an equipment that can save energy or reduce gas emissions. What is environmental sustainability? This is the ability to for the environment to survive for its use for economic activities, right? This is environmental sustainability. It is be able to sustain the environment and able to survive its use for economic activity, right? Remember to send your questions on our WhatsApp line. It's 079 578 2908. It's 079 578 2908. Right. With the government can come up with plans to ensure the environment being sustainable, or to pursue the sustainable development in the country. Right. One of the interventions that they come up with is granting property rights. Also environmental subsidies, charging for the use of the environment, environmental taxes and green taxes, and giving out marketable permits, and also command and control, or also giving out voluntary agreements. And further, they can also educate the citizens about sustainable development. Right. We are going to further discuss this during the lessons. We have major international protocols and agreements. Right. There was the Rio de Janeiro Summit, which was based on sustainable development. So its main purpose, when they said in Rio de Janeiro, it was all based on sustainable development. Right. At the Johannesburg Summit, it was mainly to address poverty eradication, and also changing the patterns of consumption, health, and environment. Then the United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development, its main purpose, it was sustainable growth, poverty eradication without damage to the environment, and chemical waste. Right. And also there was the Kyoto Protocol. The Kyoto Protocol was held in Japan. That is why it is known as the Kyoto Protocol. It is legally binding obligations of the industrialized nations to reduce emissions of greenhouse gases. The United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, it is the commitment to the Kyoto Protocol, which is Green Climate Fund and Adaptation Committee. This committee, it is to report to COP18. Remember, this one was held in COP17. So it is to report on COP18 on their next convention on climate change, which is COP18. Sorry. Right. We move from there at the term environment. Right. We've discussed it before. It refers to everything or to our surroundings which involve land, animals, water, air, and plants, right? It also provides us with the place or where we can erect our infrastructure, produce food, and also it gives us with resources where we can produce our goods and services. That is the environment, right? The state of the environment. The environment is under pressure. At the moment, the environment is under pressure due to the human activities. The environment is under pressure because human claims on the environment are more than what the nature can provide for a long-term basis, right? At the moment, it simply means the environment is under pressure due to the fact that we are claiming more than what the environment can provide on a long-term basis. That means the nature of us providing for the next generation is under pressure due to the fact that we are using more than what the environment can provide for us. Right. These claims are, this is the reason behind the fact that the environment is under pressure. It is because of the following reasons. Right. The increasing population numbers. The number of people living on the environment are too many. So we have high numbers of people living this. That means the environment or the nature cannot provide for us on a long-term basis. Right. And also excessive consumption. We are consuming more than what the nature can provide for us, leading to the environment being under pressure. The activities of human puts demand on the environment in two ways. Right. We said the environment, the state of the environment at this point, the environment is under pressure, obviously due to excessive consumption, increased population. Right. We are also putting the environment under pressure because of the activities that we are having on the environment. Right. These activities can be either in two ways. The first one is inputs or outputs. Right. What are the inputs? The natural environment provides the resources for the living and working activities for human. The living and working activities of humans produce waste that is also disposed on the environment. Right. This is what it means. The environment has given us resources for living and also the resources that we can use for working and also surviving. But in turn, whatever resources we use and also our activities produce what we call waste, which also is taken back to the environment, which is giving us resources. We continue. Right. The pressure on the environment is caused by the following. It is air pollution, water use, toxic emissions from industries, which is acid, hazardous waste generation, energy production, and use of agricultural pollutions, which are chemicals. We overfish. We also deforestation. There's also soil erosion and also overgrazing. These are the activities that are causing the environment to be under pressure. We are polluting the air, right? We are overusing our water. We are also emitting toxic gases into the air. Some industries are producing acid, which is then emitted into the environment. And also we are a hazardous waste generation. And also our energy production. We are still using a non-renewable sources. For example, we are still using coal to produce our energy. And also agricultural pollution. We overfish. And also, furthermore, we are cutting trees without replacing them. Soil erosion and also overgrazing. Pollution. Pollution, it is the introduction of waste matter into the environment. This can be done directly and indirectly. Right. Production consumption of goods and services can lead to unwanted residuals. Right. Pollution occurs when flow of residual emissions resulting from human activity exceeds the natural environment capacity to absorb them. So this simply means our activities are emitting or producing waste into the air. So when pollution occurs, it simply means the environment has no capacity to absorb of all the waste that we are producing into the environment. Then, therefore, the environment is polluted. Pollution continues. Right. Technology and control of pollution have cleaner environmental effects than previous technologies. E.g., electricity produced from coal and fuel energy. Right. Types of pollution. We have air pollution. It occurs when there is an accumulation of substances in the atmosphere, in such concentrations that they become part of the air we breathe. That is air pollution. Right. Air pollution includes tobacco smoke, exhaust fumes, and acid rain. Air pollution has negative impact on human health and harmful effect on ecosystems. So the people that smoke produces harmful air into the ecosystem, and also exhaust fumes and also acid rain. These are also causes of air pollution. The causes of air pollution include this chemical waste such as nitrogen oxides, carbon monoxide, fossil fuel, and burning power plants. Toxic substances from motor vehicles that combust fuel, chimneys, and burning of wood, forest fires, and the heavy industrial use of chemical. Those are the causes of air pollution. We move to another type of pollution, which is water pollution. This is the introduction of chemical and physical or biological materials into fresh water. The largest sources of water pollution are the dumping of industrial waste and treated sewage into lakes and rivers, and the running off from fertilizers. The introduction of these pollutants contaminate water and affect organisms that live in rivers and seas. It also poses great health hazard to people who uses untreated water in river, dams, and lakes for cooking and cleaning and drinking. Right. Water pollution. Certain companies can decide, or illegally so, to dump their chemical waste into rivers and lakes. Right. As we know, most of rurals in South Africa are using water from lakes and seas. That is for cooking and drinking. And mostly in African countries, which is still going, people are still using water from the seas, and which is obviously untreated. So when those companies decide to dump waste in these waters, they pose a health risk to these individuals that are using this water to drink and cook. And also not only on humans, and also we have organisms that are surviving on these lakes and seas. They also pose a risk to them when these chemicals are disposed in the water. That is water pollution. Right. We have examples of water pollution. It is sewage disposal and domestic waste, industrial effluents, and agricultural and mining waste. Right. And land pollution and environmental pollution. It arises from dumping toxic waste products. Land pollution damages the earth's land surface through the misuse of the soil by poor agricultural practices, mineral exploitations, industrial waste dumping, and haphazard disposal of urban waste. Right. If land is polluted in this way. So especially when it comes to the mining industry, if they do not dispose their chemicals proper, people that are living next to these mining companies tend to suffer the most. Their environment is affected, and also some industries decide to dump their chemical waste next to where the humans live. Right. It also includes visible water and litter, as well as the pollution of the soil itself. Examples of land pollution is soil pollution, waste disposal, and soil erosion. Right. And also human beings without companies play a major role in polluting the environment. We are responsible for littering our environment. We do not dispose our waste in a proper way. We just dump our waste in any way where possible for us to. So we are also responsible for land polluting. Right. Then noise pollution. People who live nearby airports, train stations, or factories can actually be harmed by the noise level that they endure. Right. Soil erosion. It refers to the wearing away of filled topsoil by natural or physical forces, water, wind, or through forces associated with farming activities such as tillage. Environmental problems. The environment is facing major problems. That is why we are not able to sustain the environment that we're living in. One of the problems that we have is deforestation. What is deforestation? It is the cutting or clearing or removal of trees into less biodiverse ecosystems such as pasture, cropland plantations, or permanent destruction of forests in order to make land available for other use. In simple terms, it is the cutting down of trees without replacing them. So, due to high levels of industrialization with countries, so we cut trees, whether to make use of the land, whether it's for infrastructure or for housing. So we deforestate without replacing the trees. We cut down the trees without replacing them. That is deforestation. So that is one of the problems that the environment is facing. Now, right, then climate change. This is the change into the composition of the atmosphere that is direct or indirect related to human activities. Remember to send your questions on 079 578 2908. It's 079 578 2908. Right, still on climate change. A buildup of certain gases into the atmosphere causes the heat from the sun to be captured into the atmosphere, which can lead to global warming. This is called a greenhouse effect. This change has an effect on the world's weather patterns, which is global warming, or which could include a rise on the sea level, change in rainfall patterns, and possible drought and habitat loss. So, right, climate change causes global warming. Global warming can mean that we are facing possible high levels of rains or drought. Right, to remember what drought is. Drought is when we have too much rainfall or no rainfall at all. So those are one of the causes of those are the causes of that. That's what global warming causes, right? And that's what global warming, which is caused by climate change. So when there's climate change, it's either mean we are going to have global warming. Global warming will lead to high levels of rain or no rainfall at all. Right, and then conservation. What is conservation? It deals with sustainable use and management of both renewable and non-renewable sources to ensure that they are available for use and for future future generations. So when we conserve, it simply means we are using the resources enough for us, or we are sustaining the resources that we have, either non-renewable or renewable sources, so that the future generation can still use the resources that we have. Conservation is necessary since humans tend to overutilize the environment. Conservation is applied in botanical parks, game parks, reptile and butterfly sanctuaries, minerals and forests, museums, buildings of special architectural and historical interest. Conservation continues. The following aspect of conservation need to be emphasized. There is an opportunity cost. Externalities are often present. Self-interest has short-term horizon. Right. Preservation. Preservation means to keep something intact. Preservation deals with those aspects of environment that are threatened with extinction. Some resources may not only be non-renewable, but if lost, they are irreplaceable. For example, an ecological system, a heritage site, an indigenous forest, a wetland, a river mouth ecosystem, species of animals, birds, insects, and flowers are on the verge of extinction. Right. So for us to preserve, we have to come up with ways of preserving these things. Some of these things are not only non-renewable. It means once it's not there, there is no way that can be replaced. It is the end. It is exhausted. It is not there. Has become extinct. All right. This may include animals, birds, insects, and also indigenous forests. Right. Government can come up with policies for environmental sustainability. The government can interfere by doing the following. One, it is buy or expropriate. Under government control and management, social welfare may be maximized but it may be costly. In many instances, such assets are simply closed for human use, such as indigenous forest in South Africa. So the government can either buy or expropriate these what did we say here? These ecological system or heritage sites, right? Or for us to be able to preserve them. So the government can buy or expropriate, but in this case, it says these may be costly since some of these resources are not available for human use. For example, the indigenous forest in South Africa. Right. They can also subsidize. So the river mouth system could be left to private ownership, but a subsidy given through maintenance grants or tax censorship concessions. So this simple means the government can pay the private sector a certain subsidy or a grant for them to sustain these resources. Remember to send your questions on 079 578 2908. It's 079 578 2908. Right. The government can also have a policy on controls. The government can compel the owner to apply control measures, such as quantities of prawns and young fish that may be removed, the activities of visitors and the number of visitors allowed per day. Sorry, this simply means the government can put up controls against companies. This can simply mean the government can state or give as a company that it can only remove a certain quantities of prawns or young fish at a certain period of time, or a number of visitors are allowed to visit a certain place per day, so that we can sustain that resource. Right. Externalities. What are externalities? Externalities are the extra costs and benefits that are not captured by market transactions. They can either be positive or negative. This depends on whether people enjoy additional benefits that they did not pay for, or whether they suffer additional costs that they did not pay for. So this simply means these are costs that are not captured during the production of that product. So these are costs, they can either be positive or negative. So a certain people can enjoy the additional benefits of a certain product that they did not pay for, or suffer additional costs that were not part of the production or them purchasing that product. Right. An example of a negative externality could be pollution emitted from a factory affecting the health of or residents near the factory, right? This is a negative externality, right? An example of a positive externality could be the invention of a new technology such as solar power being used in the production processes. Using the market. Also, we can use the market to sustain the environment, right? The market can be used to ensure sustainability, provided sustainability is to the advantage of producers. Therefore, a particular approach is required. The market does not capture social cost and benefit. The market is driven by self-interest. This implies that the environment is for individuals to use for their own benefit. The market therefore fails for various reasons. The environment is a common resource. Many parts of environment are not privately owned, such as seas. Many of those services provided by the environment do not have price, so there is no economic incentive to economize on their use. Right? At a zero price, the environment will be overused. Externalities: when people pollute the environment, the costs are borne by others. Right? Let's go back and explain this. Right? It says the market can be used to ensure the sustainability, provided sustainability it is the advantage of the producer. So it simply means we can use the markets or the firms to sustain the environment, but this is can only be used or can be sustainable if the sustainability that is being undertaken it is to the advantage of the producers. As we've said, remember the externalities the externalities that are posed by environment deterioration are not covered on the manufacturing of the product. So the market is self-driven, is a self-driven by interest. So most people use the environment for their own benefit. Many of the services provided by the environment do not have a price, so there is no economic incentive to economize on their use. Right? At zero price, the environment will be overused. The fact that most of the resources that we get to the environment do not have a price. For this fact, people will overuse the environment for the fact that it does not come with a price. Externalities, right? We said externalities are when the people pollute the environment, the costs are borne by others. For example, if a mining company is polluting the environment and that pollution is causing the resident to have health problems, the mining company will not incur those costs of those health problems, but the resident of that town will incur the cost. So that is what it means when it says when people pollute the environment, the costs are borne by others. The greater these external costs, the lower the social efficient level of output will be. Right? If a business pollutes the air that we breathe, no one can stop it because the air belongs to no one. Simple. People will pollute the environment or will pollute the air. No one will stand up and say stop or polluting the environment, or can you come up with ways to do this, because the air belongs to no one. It comes at no price. Continue with using the market. Right? People lack knowledge. People may cause environment damage without realizing it, especially when the effects are built up over a long time. So most people do not have knowledge of the damage that they're causing on the environment, especially if the damage is not immediate. It will only be visible after a long time. Carelessness. Consumers and business are frequently prepared to continue with various harmful practices and leave future generations to worry about the environment and consequences. I've mentioned before that us as consumers, we are also responsible for the environment deterioration that we are having For one, we are responsible for littering the environment, which we do not take responsible for, thus causing consequences for the future generations on our environment. So if we do not stop littering our environment, the future generation might have no resources to use in the future. Right. The government interventions to ensure sustainable development. Right. The government can come up with interventions to sustain the environment. One of them is we only stated them in our previous slides. We did not explain them. One, we said policies including granting property right. Right. If the government can grant property right to individuals, they will definitely care for them. Right. This says people care for the things that belongs to them and will try and use them as profitably as long as possible. So if government is to give people property rights, that means people will have the edge to care for them because they belong to them. So if government can do that, we can ensure sustainable development. If property rights can be expanded to common goods such as clean air, those suffering from pollution can charge the polluters for the right to pollute. Right. This simple means, right, if government can grant property rights to clean air, so it means those suffering from pollution can charge the polluters for the right to pollute the air. Therefore, this can mean that obviously because they are at a loss, they will obviously care the environment. Right. The principles of the polluters paying victims to reduce pollution is sometimes followed by the government. E.g., in terms of the Kyoto Protocol, the developed countries agreed to provide financial assistance to developing countries because they cause less pollution. That simple means the countries that are producing more gas emissions into the air, according to the Kyoto Protocol, they agreed to provide financial assistance to less developed countries since they emit less pollution. Right. The developing countries therefore pay for the right. The developed countries therefore pay for the right to pollute. Environmental subsidies. An alternative is to provide subsidies for activities that reduce environmental damage. We mentioned it before that the government can subsidize recycling waste, production of unleaded petrol, and development of an equipment that can save us energy or reduce smoke. Right, charging for the use, and they also can charge for the use of the environment. The pricing of the environment is one method used by the government to impose environmental charges. This means that government levies a fee on consumers and producers for the waste, which can be either solid, liquid, or gas that they can produce or dump in the environment. For example, local authorities levy charges for rubbish collection or sewage disposal on households and businesses and others. Right. Obviously, we know that municipalities are responsible for collecting rubbish and also sewage disposal. So residents and businesses pay a certain levy for that, for those services. So that is charging for the use of the environment. Also, the government can also levy the environment or introduce green taxes. This is a tax that can be imposed on the output of a good where external environment costs are generated. Green taxes are charged on items such as tires. And they can also introduce marketable permits. Each business is given a license or a permit to emit a share of chemical pollutants. In developed countries, the businesses who obtain these licenses or permits or credits can trade them in a permit market. Then international measures. Remember to send your questions on our WhatsApp number, which is 079 578 2908. 079 578 2908. Right, we also have international measures which are towards sustainable development. Right, many of the environment problems are not only local or national, but are global. Global issues required joint action by the government around the world. The world's biggest concerns are loss of biodiversity, toxic and hazardous waste, climate change, and loss of indigenous knowledge. International measures have been implemented to deal with the following 5 environmental problems. One, which is biodiversity loss. What is biodiversity loss? It is if species become extinct or what we know as die out complete, this cannot be reversed. So the reason why international or the world has come and sat down and in a joint action by governments, it is one, to avoid biodiversity loss where certain species become extinct. This cannot be reversed. Once a species is extinct, it cannot be replaced. Right, modern techniques such as gene plants can limit the loss of species. The Convention of International Trade in Endangered Species, which is known as CITES, sets many policies to deal with species loss. Chemical waste. Chemical waste is toxic. Right. There is a question on what is it's the Tokyo Protocol. The Tokyo Protocol, it was one of the UN, the United Nations treaties that they come up with. They set in Japan, and that is why it is known as the Kyoto Protocol. Their main issue, it was to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions into the air. We are going to deal with it more when we deal with all the international treaties that we have to discuss. Right. The chemical waste is toxic. It has a negative effect on living beings and can cause infertility or death. Chemical waste need to be carefully managed to ensure it does not seep into the ground. The Stockholm Protocol is a United Nations agreement to limit chemical waste. Right, we spoke of let's go back. Remember, we spoke of the international measures that will come up. Right, the biodiversity one, the most of these things, the international measures, when they come together as government, they were to address this, which is the biodiversity loss, hazardous waste. Right, the biodiversity loss. The Convention of International Trade in Endangered Species is one of the conventions where they set and decided this is one of the policies that deals with species lost. Right, the chemical waste, which is toxic and also can cause infertility or death. The international agreement that was set that deals with this chemical waste, it is the Stockholm Protocol, is a United Nations agreement. It was set to limit chemical waste. Right, and then there are hazardous waste. Hazardous waste is highly toxic. It has a slow decomposition rate. It stays poisonous for a very long time. The most dangerous waste is radioactive waste from nuclear power. The Basel Convention is an international agreement to manage nuclear waste, and South Africa is a signatory to the agreement. So hazardous waste, it was also one of the problems that we are facing as internationally. So the Basel Convention was set And then there was an international agreement, which South Africa also formed part of that agreement. Right. Climate change policy adaptation and mitigation. Right. Global warming primarily causes climate change. Climate change can be reversed through widespread international cooperation, e.g., sharing weather information and weather patterns, agreeing to limiting pollution and banning chemical products such as greenhouse gases that damage the ozone layer. The Kyoto Protocol of 1997 is an international agreement to limit the production of greenhouse gases because voluntary reductions of carbon dioxide levels did not succeed. So international companies or countries, or all the countries that set in Japan in 1997, they had an agreement. The agreement was to that the developed countries are to pay or assist financially the less developing countries when you're dealing with greenhouse emissions. So when we're saying they are paying for polluting the environment. So obviously that was a movement to make sure that developing countries what are polluting or emitting more greenhouse gases emit less, so that they do not have or financially assist less developed countries when it comes to sustainable development. Right. Loss of indigenous knowledge. Due to environmental degradation, so people get to lose indigenous knowledge. Indigenous people have a lot of knowledge about the natural environment, which they use to make a living. Indigenous people traditionally used organic methods and natural processes. As indigenous people lose their habitats or are unurbanized, this knowledge is disappearing and is being lost to the world forever. Local capacity building is very important for the environment and sustainability of indigenous people, finding a way for them to earn a living in their traditional environment. Remember, before we used to produce most our food naturally. Most of the food that we are consuming, it's genetic modified, which is also the genetic modifying of this food is we are using chemicals which are causing damage to the environment. So most of the people are losing their indigenous knowledge to that fact. Right. We are going to deal with these major protocols and agreement that we have been available in internationally. Right. Since 1990, the United Nations has convened various meetings with all countries worldwide on issues affecting them. They should take the responsibility for the management of these issues. Right. Our first international agreement was the Rio de Janeiro Summit. This summit took place in 1992 and with the objective of sustainable development. The outcomes included these: environmental protection as an integral part of development, cooperation to conserve, protect, and restore the health of the ecosystem, prevent environmental degradation. Right. We have local policies. One, the local policy, it is the Johannesburg Summit. It was hosted in 2002 in Johannesburg on sustainable development. Their outcomes included: one, they are to eradicate poverty, changing unsustainable patterns of consumption, and also globalization, health, and the environment. Right. International policies. Right. The Kyoto Protocol. This conference was held in 1997 in Kyoto. It is established and legally binding obligations whereby industrial countries agreed to reduce their emissions of 6 greenhouse gases. We have the Millennium Goals development. The communities dependent on health ecosystems to survive and prosper. Some of these Millennium Goals are the eradication of poverty, of extreme poverty and hunger, achieve universal primary education, gender equality, reducing child mortality, improve maternal health, combat HIV and AIDS and other diseases to create a global partnership for development. These were the goals that were developed for the Millennium Development Goals. Right, and then we have the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, COP17. The 17th Conference of the Parties was held in Durban, where the following decisions were taken. Commitment to the Kyoto Protocol and reducing pollution by greenhouse emissions, a green climate fund to help developing countries to establish cleaner sources of energy and adapt to climate change. An adoption of 16 members to report to COP18 on the improvement of the ability of the poorest and most vulnerable countries to adapt to climate change. So COP17 that was held in Durban on which was the 17th conference. Right. The reason why it's known as the COP17, it was the 17th conference that was held. Right. There are resolutions on that convention. One, it was to commitment that they had on the Kyoto Protocol, obviously to reduce polluting by greenhouse gases. And also they agreed on establishing a fund. This fund is to help developing countries to establish, obviously, cleaner sources for energy. And also the 16 members were to report to COP17, which is obviously their next conference after the 17th conference, on how they've improved on adapting to climate change, mostly on vulnerable countries. Right, they were also to come up with better protection and help against losses and damages relating to climate change. Remember to send your WhatsApp questions on 079 578 2908. We are going to do our questions. We are going to start with multiple choice questions. Right, multiple choice questions are found in our section A of the NSC examination papers. It is compulsory to answer these questions. Learners should attempt to answer these questions. They should not leave blank spaces. So even if you are not sure with the answer, do not leave blank spaces. Make it a point that you leave the question answered. Right. Learners should not choose two options, e.g. A and B, and guesswork is not encouraged. You are not to choose two questions. You are to choose only one answer that is correct. Right. That's question 1. It says the government can levy a or an N tax on the environment polluters. Right. It's A, import, B, personal income, C, consumption. We said it is a green tax or an environmental tax. The answer is D. All right. Question 2, the granting of a license to business that allow them to pollute up to a certain degree, it is referred to as A, marketable permits, B, legislation, C, taxable permits, D, licensing permits. We said it is marketable permits. Right. Natural resources are managed in such a way that it is available to present and future generation. A, it's preservation, B, pollution, C, renewal, D, conservation. The answer is D, conservation. Question 4, it says the agreement to ban 12 of the most dangerous manufactured chemicals was addressed by A, the Basel Conventions, B, Stockholm Protocol, C. Johannesburg Summit, D. Kyoto Protocol. The answer is B. Is Stockholm Protocol. Question 5. It says global warming is caused by the release of A. Dash into the atmosphere. A. Oxygen. B. Carbon dioxide. C. Hot air. D. Cold air. The answer is carbon dioxide. And number 6. The granting of what is this? Sorry. Right, we're moving to short questions. It says provide the term or concept for each of the following descriptions. Write only the term or concept next to the question number. No abbreviations, acronyms, or examples will be accepted. Remember this. So, and if, for instance, if your answer requires a GDP, do not write GDP, write gross domestic product in full. Right. So the next question, it says natural resources that cannot be replaced when exhausted or used up, they are called non-renewable. 2.2, it says a license given to businesses allowing them to pollute up to a certain level. We did this in the multiple choice question. It is known as a marketable permit. Question 2.3, it says a variety of plant and animal species found in a particular environment are known as biodiversity. 2.4, a release of harmful gases into the atmosphere is known as pollution. Resources that can be replaced or regenerated, they are known as renewable. Right. Remember to send your questions on 079 578 2908 079 578 2908. Right. We're moving to data response questions. These are type of questions of a meager cognitive level. They are found in section B of the NSC's examination. For example, it's either be question 2.2, 2.3, 3.3, 4.2, or 4.3. They are in form of a graph, cartoon, table, extract, real data, or combination of an extract and a graph, cartoon, or table. Items in the data response questions range from easy to difficult questions. Right. The question is, study the information below and answer the questions that follow. We have environmental problems, big businesses, which are certain individuals that are emitting gas. Right. And then it says here, we need more measures to ensure our survival. Environmental subsidies will help. Right, we need more measures to ensure our survival. Environmental subsidies will help. Right. Questions. It says identify the type of pollution in the cartoon above. The pollution is air pollution or atmospheric pollution, because we can obviously see there are two businesses which are represented by two men, and also there are in these industries there that are producing gas which is emitted into the air. So it is air pollution. Right. It says what major environmental problem can result from the business activities above. Right. One can be either climate change or global warming. Right. Obviously, with climate change, it simply means we might end up having high levels of rainfall or no rainfall at all. Right. 4.13, it says briefly describe the term environmental sustainability. Environmental sustainability, it is the ability of the environment to survive its use for economic activity. It is the ability of the environment to survive its use for economic activity. That is what we call environmental sustainability. We move with data response question. It says, what impact will environmental problems have on food security? Right, continuous food production. Right. The question is, what impact will environmental problems have on food security or continuous food production? It will limit the production of food due to extreme droughts and floods that might cause heat waves or wildfires. Right. If we're experiencing environmental problems, which can in most cases come in form of climate change or global warming. Right. This simply means if we have no rain or too much rainfall, right, that is drought, right? So it simply means our plants or what we've planted or can die. Remember, when we have too much rain, our plants can die. If we have no rain, if we have high levels of heat, our plants can die. Right. Also, hazardous waste and chemical waste will reduce the quality and limit or quantities and contaminate food. For example, if we have a hazardous waste or a chemical waste, or if a chemical waste is disposed in a water source, the water source that is used to water our plants, it simply means the food that is going to be produced there will be contaminated or will reduce the quality of that food. Right. Forcing producers to change their production processes due to a changing climate and cultivate different products which may not be in demand. Right. Further that, so if we have environmental products problems, producers or farmers, what we call farmers, may be forced to change whatever it is that they were producing to plant any other plants that is suitable for that problem that may also not be in need of that. Right. It says this question says, how can environmental subsidies be used to ensure sustainable development in South Africa? How can environmental subsidies be used to ensure sustainable development in South Africa? Right. Subsidies can be granted to businesses to reduce environmental damage by recycling of bottles, cans, and cardboard. Right. Remember, we said the government can subsidize a company for recycling or producing an equipment that will reduce the use of energy and also emit less gases. So subsidies can be granted to businesses to reduce environmental damage by recycling of bottles, cans, and also cardboard. Right. The government can also subsidize new technology that saves energy, such as energy-saving light bulbs or solar geysers, air power to reduce pollution. They also can promote environmental friendly substitutes like unleaded petrol. I want us to go back to the international treaties. We are done with our questions. International agreements.
Believe in yourself. Believe.
So, and I thought giving you these questions will confuse you. So they want you to go back to these things.
Because I think the say and then more on international policies. Okay, I'll go back and
Dreams.
Yeah. So
What is your dream?
go back to the slide.
Yini iphupho lakho? Not your parents' dreams, not your mom's dream for your life. What is your dream? Is it to get a bursary? Is it to study science? Is it to become a DJ? Is it to become a singer? What is your dream? Iphupho lakho. Once you have that dream, what I need you to do, I need you to write it down. Ingole mofati. Write it down, ibhale phansi, and read it each and every single day when you wake up. Read it each and every single day before you go to bed, and remind yourself of where you want to see yourself. What is your dream? Write it down, meditate on it, and go after it with everything that you have.
Do you know that you are different? Do you know that your fingerprint is different? It's different from your peers, from the people that you are studying with. So do not compare yourself with your peers. Do not compare your results with what they're getting, because you are different. You have your own talents and skills, and also you have your own gifts. Embrace what you can do. Always put in the work to make sure that your results become better than what they were yesterday. But do not compare yourself, because when you compare yourself, you do not know what another person has, and they do not have what you have. So believe in yourself. You are different, and keep on putting the work.
Okay, welcome back. We are going to go, because there are more questions on the international policies. We'll have to go back on those policies. Remember to send your questions on 079 578 2908. When governments they decided to come up together and sit for these so that they can reach, we can have sustainable development. So one of the policies that they came up with was the Kyoto Protocol. This was held in 1997 in Kyoto. It was established, and it is legally binding, has legally binding obligations whereby industrial countries agreed to reduce their emissions of 6 greenhouse gases. On a previous slide, we also agreed that the developed countries, because they are emitting more, they agreed to help less developed countries on financially on them to reduce emitting these gases. So this protocol, this policy was set in Kyoto. They sat down and came up with legally binding obligations where the developed countries or industrialized countries agreed to reduce the emissions of greenhouse gases. Right. And then we spoke of the Millennium Development Goals. These were goals that were developed also for this environmental sustainability. Sorry. One of the goals that was stated there, it was to eradicate extreme poverty and hunger. That was one of their main goals. It was eradicate extreme poverty and hunger worldwide. Sorry. Right. They were also to achieve universal primary education. When they're saying they were to achieve someone who has primary education, it simply means an individual has the ability to read and write. That is having primary education. So everyone in the worldwide, they wanted to achieve that, to show that, to see and have everyone be able to write and have primary education. Right, gender equality. This was also one of their goals. They wanted to see gender equality worldwide. Further, they were to reduce child mortality rates. Right, these are the number of babies that die within the age of 2. So that's the child mortality rate. So they obviously had to seek improving the health systems of the world. So that's why they had to reduce child mortality. which is mostly faced by mostly southern hemisphere countries. They face a high child mortality rates. Right, and it also seek to achieve, to improve maternal health, combat HIV and AIDS and other diseases, and also create a global partnership for development. Right, improve maternal health. You know, this deals with obviously women. So this is to improve the health of women that obviously are pregnant. So therefore, if this is improved, then this can lead to less child mortality rates, and they were to combat HIV and AIDS and also other diseases, and also create partnership for development. That was the Millennium Goals, sorry. Right. Then there was the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. This convention sits, it has set for 17 times. That is why their last convention is called COP17. Their last sitting was in Durban. These were the decisions that were made. Right. It was the commitment they had to commit. Remember, the Kyoto Protocol is a United Nations policy. So they were to sit and also commit to the decisions or the agreement that they had in Kyoto. And also these were to reduce pollution by greenhouse gases. Right. In that convention, they also agreed to have a green climate fund, which was to help developing countries to establish cleaner sources of energy and to adapt to climate change. Right. Then an adaptation committee of 16 members was requested to report back to COP18 on the improvement of the ability of these vulnerable countries to adapt to climate change. Remember, on COP17 they set, and obviously they decided to establish a fund which was to help the less developing countries with adaptation to climate change. So also the agreement, a committee of 16 members was to report back on their next sitting, which is COP18, on the improvement of the poorest countries on the adaptation of climate change. That was the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, COP17, which was held in Durban. Right. They also had a better protection and help against losses and damage related to climate change. Right. There was also this treaty which was held in the Johannesburg Summit. Right, Johannesburg Summit, it was hosted in Johannesburg in 2002. It is one also of the policies that we have on sustainable development. It was hosted in 2002 in Johannesburg. One, it was also to eradicate poverty, changing unsustainable patterns on consumption, globalization, health, and environment. So all of those policies were developed to sustain environment. So they were put up. These include the Kyoto Protocol, the Millennium Goals Development, the Johannesburg Summit, and other. We've come to the end of today's lesson. Thank you for watching this lesson. Please remember to sanitize, wear your mask, maintain social distance, and keep safe. See you again another day. Goodbye.